Whoa. All right, that's probably my cue. Okay. I'm thrilled to introduce the next panel. Before I do so, I'd like to take 1 minute to pick up on something that we touched on recently today, the tragic events in Las Vegas last week. And I would like to turn the mic over to your fellow legislator and my good friend, Representative Chris Taylor from Wisconsin, who has a quick announcement in that regard.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to build on, and I talked to our Nevada folks about this as well, the gun epidemic and the most recent tragedy, and share a tactic that we're using in Wisconsin that I'm happy to share with you. A lot of you may have done this already. We have obviously introduced a lot of gun safety bills, including a bump stock ban, but we also formulated a letter that we're circulating to the entire Wisconsin legislature directed at our federal representatives and President Trump, calling on them to take action immediately to pass background checks, obviously the bump stock ban, and to allow the CDC to do the important research on the impact of guns and public safety and public health that has been banned. So wanted to encourage your delegations to consider doing this. I think it would be very powerful if every state sent a letter federally to your delegation calling for action. Not just pursue these policies in your state too, which is always another great option. I have a letter that we are currently going to send from our Wisconsin delegation if you're interested in taking that or adopting some of that. But it would be super powerful if we had all of our delegations, all of our states, I think, send a letter calling on Congress to finally act and this president to act on these very, very common sense gun safety measures. So just see me if you're interested, if you'd like to see the letter that we're sending. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I think we will also have a copy of the sign-on letter at the table that has the survey just outside the door here, so that's another place you can sign on if you'd like. So let me introduce our next panel, and before I do that, I'll say I'm Sam Munger, Director of Strategic Engagement at Sachs. I think many of you know me from previous stints at the podium in previous years, but it is fantastic to be here and to be in front of this crowd, which is bigger every year, and contains so many friends who are friends of several years now. So it's great to be here in front of you all. And it gives me particular pleasure to introduce this next panel and this next topic, and this next engagement and set of speakers for a number of reasons. So first, we have the pleasure of having a truly eminent intellectual giant, Dr. Jeffrey Sachs, who's probably known to many of you for his work on climate change with Vice President Al Gore, among others, and if not for that, then for his work with the UN on Sustainable Development Goals. So that is fantastic. Second, this is a topic that is, as I was just telling Professor Sachs, near and dear to my heart. The question of how to measure progress in the world in something other than dollars and cents, something that goes much more deeply to the actual quality of human existence in a particular place and at a particular time, is something that I've worked on and off over the years. And so as this next project deals with that, it's really great to see that start to take form in a way that has implementation and reality in states. Finally, it was not that long ago that the State Innovation Exchange 6 was a fledgling project starting up ourselves. Many of you in this room probably remember that. And we had many partners and many friends and organizations who generously gave us a platform, and many of you did in your states, gave us a platform to come and talk about what at that time seemed like, in some ways, a far-fetched idea, that you could build a network of progressive legislators that would have real power and real staying power and influence and help. So it's a real pleasure to be able to pay that forward and to give a platform for another project that is aspirational and yet also strategic and well thought out. And also we hope in the way that Six once was is really genuinely innovative and has great promise. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the co-founder and chair of Future Now, Adam Pritzker, to introduce Professor Sachs. Thanks so much.
Well, one of my colleagues, Daniel Squadron, was out in the hallway and overheard somebody say, if there's any panel to miss, it's this one. So I hope that's not true. And I'm here to prove that it, in fact, is not true. So public officials, colleagues, friends, Nick, team at State Innovation, thank you so much for having us here to launch Future Now. Future Now is an organization focused on electing leaders like all of you. Committed to bold, achievable goals for our country's future. Three co-founders came together, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who's here today, preeminent scholar, economist, academic, and Daniel Squadron, former state senator. We founded Future Now to give political heft to America's goals for 2030. These goals are comprehensive, these goals are long-term, and these goals are nonpartisan. Using America's goals as a guiding framework, Future Now seeks to support candidates who sign a pledge and endorse this broad agenda. So by signing the pledge, candidates have access to a donor pool, a network much like this, training, education, and more. So why me? Why did I decide to do this project? Most of you who know my family's last name, Pritzker, associate it with commercial success and privilege. So be it. But my family actually, if you look back, is a typical 19th century European immigrant story of my great-great-grandfather fleeing persecution in what is now geographically the Ukraine to come to the United States. And he documented that journey in a book that I actually have here with me today. And Nicholas arrived in the United States at the age of 9. No resources, no understanding of the English language, no relationships. Eventually became a pharmacist, then became a lawyer, and no law firm would hire him. He was Jewish, so he decided to start his own, called Pritzker & Pritzker. And over a century later, here I am with this book. And that book, incidentally, ends before anyone in my family had started anything other than the law firm. So Hyatt hadn't started, Royal Caribbean hadn't started, Ticketmaster or Marmon. And, you know, I can only imagine what Nicholas might think if he saw how far our family came and what he began. And for those of you who are curious, his book really has two key takeaways. One, but by the grace of God, go I. And two, we have to remain aware of where we came from, and we have to work every day to make the world and America a better place for our children and our children's children. And so I felt a real ethical imperative to launch this project with Professor Sachs and Daniel Squadron. And so without further ado, I'd love to welcome my co-founder, my friend, mentor, former professor, Dr. Jeffrey Sachs. Thank you, guys.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are really thrilled to be here, and we're really thrilled to be launching Future Now together with you, the State Innovation Exchange, and all that you represent. On the State Innovation Exchange website, it says, what do we do? It says, we support state legislators who seek to strengthen our democracy, fight for working families, defend civil rights and liberties, and protect the environment. And that's what we believe is what America is all about. And what we're proposing, and we would like you to be leaders of this movement, is to embrace clear, specific, measurable goals for our country, looking forward, holding ourselves as citizens accountable, understanding that, thanks God, not everything depends on Washington, D.C., but that we can solve problems in states, even when we have the bizarre situation we have today, watching the battles between senators and presidents over Twitter yesterday, where Senator Corker got it right that somebody missed the daycare shift in the morning yesterday at the White House. Pretty accurate description. We can still make progress, and the states can be champions of this progress, and that the progress should come from expressing what Americans want and what they need. And it is true to this day that despite the fact that we are enmeshed in terrible partisan battles and we are trapped by special interests, the vast bulk of our country, the vast proportion of our citizens want a decent life for themselves and their children with the same values that are the impulse of the State Innovation Exchange and of our thoughts about America's goals. The idea is that we can get out of our trap. Boy, are we trapped right now. We're trapped by stalemate. We're trapped by politics in Washington that really is cheating. It's lies. It's in the hands of vested interests. Corporate interests dominate, as you know very well. How else can one explain the Republican Party leadership trying for 9 months to put forward legislation that their own constituencies despise? Why is that? Well, there was one honest story about it a couple of weeks ago in the New York Times saying that our donors are pushing us to do this. If we don't do it, the donors are going to cut back. That's the deal right now. They were so embarrassed with this legislation that they wouldn't even show it to the last minute. They wouldn't hold hearings on it. They wouldn't have public discussion about it because they knew that it was repulsive. So we want to advocate championing things that are what people really want, and measuring them, and tracking them, and holding us all accountable. I do believe, as I go through these very quickly, that these are not especially goals of Democrats versus Republicans. These are goals that across society, normal people want, not necessarily powerful billionaires that fund the Republican Party. I don't know if Sheldon Adelson wants this. I don't know if Robert Mercer wants this, but we can't care less whether that's true. Who cares what David and Charles Koch want? Who cares? 2 votes. Nothing more than 2 votes. They can vote, but they cannot own our political system. So let's try to help America to understand what we really could achieve. Let me go through them quickly, if the clicker will allow that. Help. There we go. Okay. I can barely see them. Any help with this? Okay. Since I can't see the screen, I'm coming down here. And I'm going to sit with you, and we're going to look together. Okay, so the idea is 7 goals, each of them with 3 targets, all of them measurable. Really important. No joke, no nonsense. For example, good jobs. Okay, 3 goals that 100% of jobs should pay a livable wage. That's not true. We have today, that's 9 million people working that are in poverty. That's just, you read that on BLS every month. Second, that everybody should have paid family
vacation, and sick leave. And third, that labor rights should be protected with increasing worker representation. Okay. So if you look at the map, basically the darker the shade, the farther away from achieving those goals. This one is a map of people living in poverty in the United States. Now let me show you a basic point. This is all the high-income countries. For all the graphs I'm going to show you, all the way on the far left, maybe not by coincidence, that's the best, okay? All the way on the far right, that's the worst. So look at where the United States ranks compared to other countries, for example, in people living in poverty as measured by the OECD, that's the rich countries. So don't tell me we can't have low poverty in the United States, that all those other countries figure it out and we can't. Of course we could. This is bad policies we have, not inevitability. This isn't the unfair global system that's so unfair to us. Well, they all have that global system. This is unfair inside our country. Don't blame it on the Mexicans, don't blame it on the immigrants, don't blame it on the Chinese. Blame it on billionaires who are so greedy that they bought the Republican Party in Washington and are trying to this moment to cut taxes for themselves, trillions of dollars more, and put more people in poverty. Okay, goal number 2, affordable quality health care. So, measurable standard number 1, universal affordable health coverage with a cap on out-of-pocket expenses, all measurable. Second, life expectancy of at least 84 years. Third, end hunger for 100% of households. How come we have hunger in the United States? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So you see, again, the states that are in darker shade are the ones farther from this goal. What's shown here are proportions of people that do not have adequate health insurance. So could we do this? Look at this craziness. This is how much the United States spends on health care, because we've got monopolies all across the country, because we have pharmaceutical prices that are out of control. We give them a 20-year monopoly and say, charge anything you want and you tell us the bill. And then when it's too expensive, like Gilead charging $1,000 a pill for Hep C cure, then we tell people that show up that are infected, sorry, go home, you're not close enough to death yet, you don't qualify for coverage. This is the United States of America, not in the Middle Ages, but in 2017. So we're paying 17% of our gross domestic product for health care, where all the rest of the countries that we compare with higher life expectancy, are paying 10 to 12%. Ladies and gentlemen, that's $1 trillion difference per year of jacked up prices in the United States. That's what that is. Goal number 3, investing in our children. You have to be pretty damn weird not to want your children to succeed, right? Americans want good schools, so target number 1, 100% completion of quality K through 12. Goal number 2, path to higher education, including technical training without debt. Without debt. Third, early childhood education for 100% of our kids. We are earning $60,000 per person per year for every man, woman, and child in this country. Don't tell me we can't afford universal pre-K. Of course we can. So this map again shows some states are close to that, other states far behind. But look at the United States. Again, okay, how do all these other countries do this and we don't do it? Nonsense. Goal number 4, empowering people over special interests. Okay, so goal number 4, limit corporate special interest spending. We know about that. Target B, at least 70% voter participation in fair legislative districts, right? And target number C, that there should be personal control for everyone over the privacy of their online data, because we've got massive theft, massive invasion of privacy, and so forth. So this map shows how uneven it is and how many places have miserable voter turnout among our states. And this shows where American voter turnout is compared to other countries. Don't tell me we can't have higher voter turnout with proper rules, with more access, with trying a little bit harder for our democracy, and the states can lead the way. Goal number 5, equal opportunity for all. 3 targets: equal pay for equal work, regardless of gender or race. Pretty simple. Target number 2, end mass incarceration for nonviolent offenders. And target number 3, freedom from ethnic and racial profiling for everyone. And we know, again, there are massive, completely unjustified gaps in earnings between men and women and across racial groups, of course, without question. And again, here's where the United States stacks up in this is women's earnings relative to men's earnings. Why do we have to be always at the low end of the comparisons? This isn't fate. This isn't the international system. This is us and the choices we're making. And again, we don't have to wait on Washington because states can lead the way. Goal number 6, sustainable infrastructure, resilience, and innovation. So target 1, 100% of roads and bridges, railways, airports, seaports, and levees should be in a state of good repair. Not quite these days. Number 2, plans, every community should have plans for resilience against natural disasters. So sorry that after Harvey hit Texas, and you go back, how many times was Houston warned that it's inevitable that flooding is going to come, make a plan. And instead, we had a governor of Texas that was busy suing the EPA rather than making plans for his state. I think Mr. Abbott should just go home and apologize, frankly. But this is what we have when we don't have plans. And 3, enhance the scientific research and technological capabilities. For example, higher R&D spending by states. Those that are really investing in innovation are creating new enterprises and new jobs. Now here the United States is a little bit better, but we pride ourselves on being number 1 in the world. This is spending on research and development as a percent of GDP. Look at all the countries that are now higher R&D spenders than us. Israel and Korea and Switzerland and Japan and Austria, Denmark, Germany, France. Why are we falling behind so much when this is supposed to be our specialty in this country? Goal number 7, clean air, water, and energy. Target 1, that all new energy investments by 2030 should be in clean, safe energy. We are not investing in clean, safe energy right now, but all of your states have tremendous solar and wind potential, many with hydroelectric potential, some with geothermal potential, but we're not trying. We have Scott Pruitt, number 1 hack in this country. What a corrupt SOB, frankly. Let me say it again in technical terms. That's the jargon we use, corrupt SOB. He made his whole career on handouts from the oil industry, the coal industry, the natural gas industry. And today he's in Hazard, Kentucky, how appropriate, trying to turn on the coal industry again with artificial subsidies because he's paid off his whole life to do that. It's disgusting that we're subjected to this, when we could have an economy that is safe for the climate and clean for the air and water and safe for the workforce as well. Okay, anyway, this shows us the renewable energy by state, and we are not even coming close to what we should be doing. And look at the comparison with other countries. This is the share of renewable energy as a share of primary energy supply, US versus OECD. Because we are a petros country, ladies and gentlemen, we're in the hands of the oil industry. And it's got to stop, because otherwise we're going to destroy the environment and we're going to destroy our economy, because the whole world is moving to renewable energy. That's the point. Ladies and gentlemen, the State Innovation Exchange, we made them. This is your agenda and our agenda, but truly it's America's agenda. We're really proud to be launching America's Goals for 2030 here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear it again for Professor Jeffrey Sachs. That was something. I'm the third co-founder of Future Now and Future Now Action. I'm the one who drew the short straw to speak after Professor Sachs. But I'm very, very excited to speak to you today and thank Adam and Professor Sachs for their really incredible presentations, and thank you to Sachs for having us here. It's really an honor to speak at this conference. I remember how excited I was when you were founded 3 years ago. I was in the state senate at the time in New York, and it was just such an exciting mission, and it's amazing to see what's come of it. So thank you for your years of incredible work. My name is Daniel Squadron, and as I said, I was a state senator in New York, actually until August. And if you'd asked me at this conference last year the likelihood of being up here as anything other than a state senator, I would have said it was very, very unlikely. But last December, I began realizing things were different. I got invited to a holiday party, not a community or labor event, just someone's party, and they asked me to speak. Now, I don't know about your districts, but in mine, an invitation like that, come talk about state government to a bunch of old friends looking to hang out, have some eggnog and describe the state legislature, had never happened ever in 9 years in office. Literally. This is actually true. I thought there'd been a misunderstanding. I was ready to go and have a drink and go home and put my kids to bed. But it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was something else. Something had happened. Something had changed. It's hard to say exactly what. Look, the fact is, people were galvanized. They were eager to learn, to get involved, to have an impact. They were excited, for the first time in my time in public life, about state government. At that party, a great author named Gail Furman, along with Melissa Walker, both of whom are here today, said they wanted to make a difference in legislatures across the country. I nodded politely, but they were serious. Today, the group they formed with friends and colleagues has raised more than $200,000 for legislatures across the country. And they deserve a big round of applause for it. And of course, in this room, it's no surprise. It's just that many more people have realized what we have known for years. State government is where it's at. There's nothing new about it. Think of the leaders who have come through. Right up there, two great New Yorkers, an assembly member and a senator, both Presidents Roosevelt. And from my home county of Kings, the borough of Brooklyn, the amazing Shirley Chisholm, absolutely, a member of the New York Assembly before becoming the first African-American woman elected to Congress. I am not the type of New Yorker who only talks about New Yorkers. This young woman is a state senator from Arizona and is Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, another trailblazer. And of course, the state senator from the south side of Chicago. a man whose personal decency and leadership we miss every day. And of course, there are many others. My mentor, another Brooklynite, is up there. If you recognize anyone else, you can tweet us at FutureNowUSA. Tell us who they are. Yeah, you're screaming out too, that's fine. Tammy Baldwin's up there? Anyway. I'll tell you this, there are no more beards like that in politics. The truth, that's right, Al Grasso, that's a good one. The truth is, there are so many household names who have served in the state legislature because great leadership is born and exercised in state legislatures. State legislators can be our great American leaders. In fact, many already are. And then some go on to other jobs. But serving local districts in the laboratories of democracy, enacting state policies in our federal system, these are the core pillars of American leadership. Now, all of us know that state legislators' key role, the leadership and courage it takes to deliver results, is an all too often ignored reality. Well, Future Now Action wants to fix that. We know that you can't create a better future in this country if you try to look past the 50 state capitals. That's where we start, asking state legislators to sign a pledge to achieve America's goals for 2030, which Professor Sachs just inspirationally described. Working with Future Now, which is our related political committee, we will support those who have the potential to make the biggest impact toward the goals right now. That big impact leads to the second, often ignored, but well understood in this room, reality of state government. It can have such an enormous impact. America's goals are big, bold, and ambitious. Achieving them would truly alter the course of our country. And it is equally true that state legislators, can achieve every single one of them. Up here we have an example of some big actions and some big impacts that have already happened. Now, in each case that I'm about to go through, I'm sure that legislators in this room, in this case Californians, okay, silent Californians, I know there are some in the room because I looked at the list, have a much fuller understanding of the issue than I do or even Professor Sachs does. These are simply illustrations of the possibilities, not prescriptions or the solution. That's an important point in general. America's goals are just that, goals and measurable targets, not rigid policies, not a package of bills that we expect you to pass in your states. Each of you knows best how to achieve success in your state. The realities, the politics, the challenges could very well require a different path in a different place. We are proposing a shared vision and measurable outcomes and a partnership to get there. 2002, California passed paid family leave. Now more than 18 million workers are covered by it, approaching Professor Sachs' target of 100%. A generation ago, Hawaii expanded what it meant to provide health care coverage, and today it is one of the top states that has a higher percentage covered at better cost than many of the states that we just saw. Oklahoma, not a state known for its progressive majorities, but it does well on this target, universal pre-K, because it invested early and it is now performing well. There's another state, Texas. Am I aligned here? I'm in Maine. That's good. I jumped ahead. There we go. Is that Texas? Great. All right. So we're going to jump to Maine. We love Maine. Thank you. Maine is a state that shows that 70% voter participation is absolutely real. Anyone who says, oh, American civic life doesn't allow for that kind of voter participation is lying to you. Maine does it, Minnesota does it, some other places do it as well. Yell out the state we're on because we don't have them on. Texas, thank you. Not a state known for how well it ranks on criminal justice reform. But wherever you start on the list, progress is possible. Texas, to its credit, is starting to make some. Am I in Nebraska? State thought of as deep red, the only unicameral legislature in our country, made real investments and had a real impact in the public sector on infrastructure. You can do this in states that might surprise you. And of course, Vermont, we have a good Vermont contingent here. Now, there's a whole lot that's specific to Vermont, and it was a real leader on this back in the mid-2000s, but that's a pretty amazing statistic.
One of the partner organizations is called Sdg Usa for Sustainable Development, and it will be hosting a lot of the metrics, a lot of the evidence, and from any state, we're encouraging you to reach out, ask questions. How could this be possible in our state under the following conditions and so forth? And we aim to become a repository for knowledge, for best practices, for examples, and also for the kind of evidence that I quickly went through that said, you say this isn't possible, it's already being done in 18 countries. So what would be the problem of doing it in ours? Because I think that a lot of what we read and hear, especially, say, from the Wall Street Journal editorial page, you can't do this, you can't do that, without explaining the most basic fact, it's already done in most normal places. And so there's a lot of lying and a lot of propaganda, but my guess is that people would like this approach. So the hard part is, yes, there will be attacks by especially corporate interests, which are very strong on, very anti on some of these things, giving us a lot of the worst behaviors that we have, not because the broad public or your voters or your constituency in any way is against it, but yes, it's partly the powerful interests that have been dominating things. My hope is that by having shared clear goals that everyone says, yeah, but of course, that we can also push back much harder against the corporate interests, and that's really purpose. But long-winded answer, the short answer is we are geared up to give technical support, measurements, data at state level, national level, comparative, in ways that can also be helpful for real politicians really facing these challenges.
Okay, and then lady behind, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Bill McCamley. I'm from Las Cruces, New Mexico. Unfortunately, we were the dark state a lot of times in some of your illustrations up there. And I guess to follow up what the gentlelady over here said, a lot of times we talk about goals and we talk about policies, and that's great and it's wonderful, but sometimes if my colleagues on the right, when they go to an ALEC convention, and they're like, here's how you screw over public schools, and here's how you do unions, and here's your 6 ways of doing that specifically with bills. I guess in addition to the financial question, if you have these goals, will you also be providing not just policy briefs and data, but also draft legislation? So as an example, my state relies on private prisons more than anyone else in the country. And when you talk about criminal justice reform, I would like to know, as a legislator, okay, how do we go about changing that up? But I need specifically to know how to make that work. And so, especially as a senator, which you were, are you guys going to be helping us with actual legislation? Because I don't get paid and I don't have a staff at all. And so I've got to do all this myself, and that would be really huge. So can you guys do that?
Thank you very much. And it's an important point. The point Professor Sachs made before, we all would think about helping politically. Substantively, helping know the right answer or find the right answer is huge. It's one reason we're at 6. We're at 6 because it's an incredible collective of deeply committed and effective legislators. Also because 6 will hopefully be a partner moving forward on exactly what you're talking about, which is taking these goals and the targets and making them practical. And that's, Future Now Action exists for that reason. I'm a big believer in big ideas. I love them. But when I was in the state Senate, they were a hobby, unfortunately, because the day-to-day of legislating and representing constituents was about getting things done, about responding to the day-to-day, about making the best choice, often among a set of not very good ones. We want to create space to change that. We want to push some of those corporate special interests off the field and put on some new players like Six, like others, to do exactly the blocking and tackling that you're talking about.
And let me add that with Six getting on board and individual legislators, it will be much faster for us to be able to build the teams of support to say, look, these are popular, people want to know how they can be done. We have to build up on the side of this effort that capacity to be able to give practical response. That's larger teams, more awareness. But this is a movement. It starts today, right now, actually. And in this sense, the more we hear from you, that's great, but you got to help if we're going to be able to do this. That's helpful, actually, for us to be able to mobilize more resources and say there's a lot of buy-in, but there's a lot of specific help that's requested as well.
Yeah, actually, right behind the gentleman who just spoke. And then I'll look this way next. Apologies.
Thank you. I'm Joyce
Actually, I
Elliott.
can't see anything, but I will look this way next. Go ahead.
I'm Joyce Elliott from Arkansas. And I'm just trying to think about in terms of the other countries that are doing a good job of already meeting these goals, a way to make it something useful for us. So I was part of a group that took a look at education in terms of OECD, at maybe the 10 highest performers where they had intersections where they were all doing these things very well. Let's say these goals, I couldn't watch fast enough to figure this out, but are there some of those countries for all of the goals that are listed, some of those countries that are knocking them out of the park, say a top 5 or something that are doing all those things well? If that is the case, if we could take those top 5 or whatever number you choose and give us a compilation of these 5, 10 countries do all of these things well, and this is how they do it, so that we are armed with not just saying they do it, but we can actually say how, and that could inform our policies very well.
Wonderful.
Great point.
Great.
States and countries.
Could I just say a word? There are countries that just do things well. Some of my favorites are Denmark, Sweden, Norway. By the way, they also rank numbers 1, 2, and 3 usually on the happiness scores because they do things well and they're happy about it. And they don't have Robert Mercer, Sheldon Adelson, David and Charles Koch mucking up their politics, frankly. So part of it is they don't have these powerful, selfish billionaires saying, we don't want to have anything to do with a good society. We just want our taxes cut. And so we have some particular conditions here that have opened us up more to powerful vested interests, corporate special interests, that hold back progress that we all want. And part of our politics is we can, and I can get you also some information, so we'll figure out how we can respond to these requests systematically. But part of it is showing, come on, 80% of Americans want this. What's really holding us back? And you know, if you look down a list, by the way, almost every high-income country has guaranteed family leave, sick leave, paid vacation time. We have none of that in this country. So they've all figured out some of these. And we have to show that this isn't some crazy idea. This is normal, except here. And that's part of what our political change has to be.
Yes, sir, and then we'll do 2 from this side. Here, take this mic.
Getting closer. We're getting closer.
Thank you. And I appreciate everything that you're doing. I was talking to Mandela earlier about the very first 6, and we were talking about how we don't have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to some of these issues on a local level. I wear 2 hats today. One is as a member of the Tennessee General Assembly, Democratic caucus. Now, on that level, I have to look at what we're doing on the local levels to feed and put into the pipeline those individuals who are going to eventually become state representatives and senators and congressmen and U.S. senators. We need help on that. We had all the best ideas and intentions ever since President Obama went in, but we did not have the resources, neither the funding nor the technical support to get it done. And it was like fighting, being in kindergarten and fighting the little kindergartner who had gone home and gotten a big brother from college because all of the Republicans had gone and got national resources and they beat us down. So on that level, I'd like to know that you are going to reach down and start to feed resources and funding for some of the local races. They actually told us what they were going to do. They said they were going to create a red to the bone initiative, and they did. And they did. There's nothing we could do to stop them. And the other is also where they had as a co-chair for the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, Census and Redistricting Committee. All of what we're talking about, every one of those values that is represented there, for it to come to fruition legislatively, it's got to have the votes. Census and redistricting is critical. We, once again, did not have the resources in 2010, 2011 to address that. So we got wiped out. We have the extreme districts, and there's nothing we can do about it now except go to court and try to fight it out there. We don't have those resources. So I want to know if your engagement will cover these areas both nationally and locally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a great point. And the answer, I mean, is essentially, what great ideas. This is exactly what we want to be doing, is getting ideas like this and then figuring out how to partner on them. You know, we start with state legislatures for a lot of reasons. I really do believe they're the critical pillar around which much of our country is built, but also because we're starting. And if there's interest in working beyond that, we're interested. And when you talk about redistricting, it's certainly one of the targets, the fair district maps, along with the voter participation, but we're not going to do this on our own. The founding principle here is that we need to partner with folks, as Professor Sachs has said, who are committed to these things and whose constituents are committed to these things, but who find themselves, as you just described, sir, sort of alone, pushing the things that are most important and most popular. There's a problem there, and we're trying to help solve that problem.
I think we want to say a word about the party that's not in this room. They've never been nastier than now. The Republican Party, I'm old enough to remember when there were a lot of normal people in it. And it was once a kind of mainstream party. And while there were differences, the country had a different view and different direction. And then the Republican Party got taken over by some billionaire special interests. And the Koch brothers have been investing for a while. They're a nasty duo. Between the two of them, they have $100 billion of net worth based on a polluting industry, and they're determined, it seems, to somehow keep their $100 billion between them, even if it means wrecking the planet. And so they've done a lot of what you say to make this very hard right all the way throughout the country. My feeling is, I hope I'm not naive on this, my feeling is that even on the Republican side, my God, there's a lot of space between normal people and what their party leaders are calling for right now, exemplified by this Obamacare debacle, where they made the legislation that everybody hated. Why is that? this is what we should think. This is such a distortion of our politics to go so hard right. It's so phony, but it's money at the top of a few huge interests lurking behind the scenes, like Robert Mercer, this hedge fund gazillionaire, who funds the most right-wing stuff, really hard right-wing stuff. And the Koch brothers, who are absolutely going to wreck the planet if they have their way. And so I hope that America's goals could be adopted even on the other side by normal people who say our politics doesn't have to wreck the planet and dispossess our own voters. And this, I think, is, it's not, your job's to beat them in the election, but our job as Americans also is to get off this crazy path that we're on that's guided not at all by the common purpose and the common interest, not even by the common opinion polls of a divided country, but by a few absolute rich plutocrats who are breaking up our country right now in front of our eyes. And I hope that we can play some role in shining a spotlight that Americans want good things in both sides, and hope that there's some challengers that are going to come on the Republican side in their primary elections that say, come on, we don't have to be so obnoxious. We can have normal politics. And so that's part of what we're hoping for as well. But the point that you're making about the kind of resources needed for success, these are the points that everybody has made so far. We're really hearing and taking to heart. And I think with the strong support here, we'll be able to help mobilize to help you.
Someone in the back there. I'll let the person with the mic choose someone in the back there. There you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm Patricia Higgins from New Hampshire. And forgive me if I did miss any explanation of how these goals were put together. And my question is, were there any conservative thinkers in the room?
What?
Did you ask any conservative thinkers?
Right. I mean, this does sound a little bit like the echo chamber. I'm all for these American goals, but the majority of legislators in New Hampshire's government would not agree with them.
Maybe I could say, let me say a word about that. All over the world, in fact, all countries around the world have adopted some basic goals for the year 2030, called the Sustainable Development Goals. Even our country did it under President Obama. All countries faced up to one basic challenge, that our economic system is not working properly anywhere in the world to achieve the combination of prosperity, fairness, and environmental safety. And so the basic idea that we need to combine economic goals like decent jobs and health care for all and education for all with basic fairness standards like equal pay for equal work with environmental safety is recognized worldwide. That's the motivation for this. If you look at each one, which we have done, and I do for a living, actually, the American people strongly support, by large majorities, these concepts. If you feel that they're controversial, I would say they're not controversial with the American people. They are controversial with some powerful interests. And this is really a fight about who runs the country. The people and their interests in their children and their interests in the safety of the community, or instead is it Wall Street, big oil, the military-industrial complex, the private health insurers? Because that's why we have such a mess, actually. Why do we pay $1 trillion more for health care? Because of powerful health lobby. Why are we in endless wars? Unlike almost any other country, we are in nonstop wars. Why is our military budget so huge? Why are we spending so much money modernizing, quote unquote, these weapon systems that are modern enough to destroy all the world 10 times over? Because we have powerful lobbies. And so the goals are demonstrably shared across the society. Of course, we've been told, no, that's not achievable, that's not achievable, that's not achievable, but that's wrong. And that's what we have to fight back against. But who's actually telling us that these are non-American or anti-American and so forth? Not the broad public in any one of these. This is not running up against a buzzsaw. This is running up, yes, against some special interests who have to be told, go back to your place, we're for the American people. That, I think, is the real point.
And it's also true that when you look at these goals just in the American district by district political context, one thing that I think we're going to see, and we're going to learn this over time and would love the feedback to keep coming in, is that some of the divide is that, you know, people on one side of the spectrum think they're more realistic in a shorter term, and people on the other side think they're a little less realistic in a shorter term, but not that they are offensive to people's basic values, to the kind of country people would like to build. And there's a con going on that we can't think of a country like this unless we're in one corner of the political spectrum. But the facts belie that. And part of the role of these organizations is to help show a path to folks who might be skeptical. The kind of votes that we all need, or I needed until August, and everyone else needs to keep their jobs and stay in public service, that there is a path that can be consistent with their value structure, or sorry, their policy structure as well, because the value structure is aligned. And that's our hope, but you know, this is version 1, and feedback is a very important step over the next months as well.
Thank you very much. I'm Janet Bewdley, State Senator from Wisconsin. The district that I represent is the largest, and it's very rural. And when I looked at your goals, I saw something that was a reflection of what's going on not only in our state with the people of Wisconsin, but within our effort to get reelected. And that is, we have populations of people that we can't reach. We can't reach them. We overlook them. When it comes to the goals, I saw those people not represented because you have no reference to connectivity, to broadband. And we absolutely must say that access to information, to commerce, to the lifeblood of our nation is on the internet. And until everybody has that, they're not equal. So I don't know if you want to put that goal in infrastructure or equality, but by God, it's got to be in there.
Bravo. Phenomenal.
But second...
And thank you. And by the way, phenomenal. And it was on the list. And when we tried to make 3 for each of these, it fell off the list. And it's a wonderful point you're making, and exactly the kind of feedback. And thank you.
But I have a question here. I really do have a question.
Your comment is fantastic.
Well, thank you. Is there a way that we can take what your goals are into how we reach out to those people that we have overlooked? And I call them the ones we overlooked because there is such a vast population of people that we truly just look over. We think those aren't our voters, and we look over them. I think about my colleague from Wisconsin, Gary Hebel. Where are you, Gary? Okay. And he sang to me on the floor of the State Assembly a song. Do you remember the song, Gary? Red Solo Cup? Okay, red Solo Cup. Who knows what a red Solo Cup is? Okay. I would dare say that most people in the Beltway who do messaging for progressive people, for progressives, don't know what the hell a red Solo Cup is. And until they do, we will not win. We've got to get some red Solo Cup messaging out of the DNC. We have to. Thank you. So there's my question. Can we do that?
Could I phenomenal. But could I make one suggestion? First, this kind of feedback's invaluable. Second, part of the idea is if you look at the goals, every one of them is stated for everybody, for everybody, for everybody, so that nobody is overlooked. But if you, as a state legislator, say, look, I'm for universal health coverage, but we're never going to do it if the internet doesn't reach this district, you can put that also as part of the solution to the problem, and we can help support you on that's part of the solution. So both to put them in the goals, and I love this suggestion, but also to say that this is not a policy list. It's a set of objectives that express the values of the American people and that we can achieve. And so part of the job that together we can do, and you as leaders in legislation can do, is say, look, we adopt these goals, but to achieve them, we need connectivity. And if we don't have that, there's no way that that's going to be successful.
Right, and just to be clear, this is the former public official speaking. It didn't fall off the list. It fell into other parts. We felt that universal broadband was implied by a number of the other targets. Your point is really well taken because we had extensive conversation about it, and so we really appreciate that. Also, when I was in the state Senate, my district, I represented Lower Manhattan and part of Brooklyn, but New York State Senate's a very tight partisan split, and I spent a lot of my time talking to colleagues from other parts of the state. New York is a big, diverse state, and there's some upstate districts probably the size of your district, and being able to figure out what was the unifying path for us was a huge challenge. All I can say is we can't do that alone, so I don't know if you're volunteering, but exactly how to line up these goals and targets with your district, because your district is not just your district. Your district is reflected in a large portion of districts around this country, and the work you do can help the gentleman from Las Cruces, which can help someone from this side who I apologize for not being able to see, and that's the process of working arm in arm.
I think we're close to having to finish up, or even past having to finish up.
One last question?
Go ahead. I'm going to have to go.
So we're going to finish up.
Because I'm flying to Europe, but when I land, they're going to ask me, does America believe in its future? So what do you think? Okay. I'm going to see Pope Francis in a few days. He's going to ask me, can America end poverty and ensure access to everybody for health care and education? What do you think? Okay. Could we make the goals achievable? Is it possible? Can 6 help? Okay. If you can help, could you raise your hand? I need to take a picture to have proof. So, exactly. Some people's hands are not raised. All right, that's pretty good. Wait a minute. All right. This is documentary evidence for the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
They right, everyone. My name is John Menino. I'm the Deputy Legislative Director here at the State Innovation Exchange. There's a good chance many of you have received many emails from me over time, so I hope you've enjoyed them. Each and every year we do a survey, an evaluation of the conference to see what people would like out of the conference and get constructive criticism. And one of those things that we hear time and time again for the last 3 years now, going on 4, I'm sure, is we would like more time dedicated to just talking with other folks from other states, some dedicated time for networking to share best practices, thoughts, ideas, policy victories. So we wanted to create just some open space for the next 15, 20 minutes to do just that, to allow you to connect with state legislators and legislative staff from other states that you have not had the opportunity to meet with before. So what I want to do for the next 15 minutes is just allow some open time, and I encourage you deeply to go and spend a few minutes gathering some business cards and talking to people from other states that you've not had the opportunity to meet with yet, in the hopes that we can share some ideas across states. So we'll take about 15, 20 minutes to do just that, and then Vicky Cimarano will lead us with a few notes going into the breakouts. Thank you.